that wasn't a BLM protest you just witnessed. That was a feminist protest against a talk about male suicide. You heard that right. Those were feminists trying to prevent men from listening to a talk about male suicide. We're going to do a deep dive into this, and it's going to be a tough one, guys. So buckle up.
There is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men.
In this country, fathers are not second-class citizens. I know there are a lot of people out there, including judges and probation officers, who still don't get that message, but fathers are not second-class citizens. Sometimes they're actually better parents.
When men are married to women who scream like you, they just want to die sooner.
Today we're going to talk about why feminists don't want to give men their space to talk about their issues and how to solve them unless it's under the guise of feminism. And I'm going to center around this discussion what happened in Toronto in 2012 with Dr. Warren Ferrell giving a talk about male suicide. So first, we probably should talk about who is Dr. Warren Ferrell. And this is Dr. Warren Ferrell, and he was actually a prominent feminist in the 70s. In fact, he was such a prominent feminist that he was on the board of the National Organization for Women in the New York chapter. Okay? So nowhere near a misogynist, nowhere near, I'm a woman hater of any sort. He was on this board of the National Organization for Women, but when he started to speak up for men's issues, even when the National Organization for Women, he was basically ostracized for it. They didn't want him around talking about these issues. So he went off and did his own thing, wrote many books. The Myth of Male Power, The Boy Crisis is probably one of his most famous ones as well. And he's been basically a bastion of pushing for more men's rights issues now. And of course, now feminists can't stand him. They loved him when he was in the National Organization for Women, but now that he's starting to speak up for women's issues, people don't want to have anything to do with him. And so what had happened was he wrote in a book something about the miscommunications between men and women during a good date, and how mixed signals and sexual activity after mixed signals can land men in hot water. So he wrote this in the book, and this is what feminists have taken issue with. It's kind of long, so just bear with me. While the label date rape has helped women articulate the most dramatic aspect of dating from women's perspective, men have no labels to help them articulate the most traumatic aspects of dating from their perspective. Now, of course, the most traumatic aspect is the possibility of being accused of date rape by a woman to whom he thought he was making love. If men did label the worst aspects of traditional male role, though, they might label them date robbery, date rejection, date responsibility, date fraud, and date lying. This was in The Myth of Male Power. It goes on to say, the worst aspect of dating from perspective of many men is how dating can feel to a man like robbery by social custom. The social custom of him taking money out of his pocket, giving it to her, and calling it a date. To a young man, the worst dates feels like being robbed and rejected. For those of you who are in the dating world, know that many women allow you to take them out on a date for a free meal. In fact, they've done studies that 40% of the women that match with you on dating apps just wanted a free meal. So this happens a lot to men. Boys risk death to avoid rejection. Example, by joining the army. Goes on. Evenings of paying to be rejected can feel like a male version of date rape. If a man ignoring a woman's verbal no is committing date rape, then a woman who says no with her verbal language, but yes with her body language, is committing date fraud. And a woman who continues to be sexual, even after she says no, is committing date lying. So he's saying it's kind of like that song that everybody wants to cancel now, Baby It's Cold Outside, where the woman is really being coy. She really does want to stay, but she needs to like protect her virtue and somewhat deny that she does want this and stuff like that. So this is the situation he's talking about. Not a woman who's saying no, don't touch me. It's oh baby, don't no, you know, that kind of stuff. Bill Burr even had a huge comedy routine about not every no means no, and he in his comedy routine explained it way better than that. Do women still do this? And he went into actual studies about this, and he cited this. Two feminists found the answer is yes. Nearly 40% of college women acknowledged they had said no to sex, even when they meant yes. In my own work with over 150,000 men and women, about half of whom are single, the answer is also yes. Almost all single women acknowledge that they have agreed to go back to a guy's place just to talk, but were nevertheless responsive to his first kiss. Almost all acknowledge they have recently said something like, "That's far enough for now," even as her lips are still kissing and her tongue is still touching his. We have forgotten that before we began calling this date rape and date fraud, we called it exciting. And that's the sentence that got him in a whole bunch of trouble. Because he's making a valid point that there are these types of women who do play this card of being hard to get and saying no when they really do mean yes. Although I don't think it's much of a problem now. I think women are starting to learn that they need to make sure that their no's actually mean no, and if they do want to have sex, to say yes. So I think this is becoming less and less of a problem. But again, this book was written, I think over 20 years ago. So it's kind of hard to again, all these cancel culture people, they want to go back to what people said and what the culture was like then. That was true for them. That might not be true now, but cancel them because what they said back then doesn't apply to today. So, but he also points out that, somehow, and he goes on to say, somehow women's romance novels are not titled "He Stopped When I Said No." They are though titled "Sweet Savage Love," which is a real book, and this is the real plot of the book, in which a woman rejects the hand of her gentler lover, who saves her from the rapist, and marries the man who repeatedly and savagely rapes her. It is this marry the rapist theme that not only turns Sweet Savage Love into a bestseller, but also into one of women's most enduring romance novels. And he's right there. And then look at books like 50 Shades of Grey, all that stuff. In fact, the biggest sexual fantasy for women, you can look this up, it is rape fantasies and all this stuff. So pretty damn confusing for men out in the dating world. That's why I just say basically avoid dating. But this is a big reason why dating is so confusing for men. So he said that, and he said all this stuff, and so now, of course, the feminists say he's excusing date rape, that he's a rape apologist, that men aren't accountable for rape, all this stuff. Of course, if you actually read it in context, try to understand that, hey, there are mixed signals going on here. Maybe women should be saying no if they really mean no, and if they really mean yes, that they probably should just say yes. That's really the point he's getting at here. And he showed even uh, studies that run by feminists that proved his point that some women do say no when they mean yes. Again, these studies were done 20 years ago. Again, I don't think that's probably as true as today, because I think women did start getting the point that they need to make sure that their no's mean no. So there's not a type of miscommunication anymore. But I digress. So then that then brings us to 2012, where Warren Ferrell had and another group called Cafe. They're one of those equality groups that wanted to hear about male suicide. And Dr. Warren Ferrell was writing a book about the boys' crisis, I think, at this point, or might have just came out. And one of the big issues in that book was talking about male suicide and why do boys commit suicide at a much larger scale than girls. And so he was going to have a talk about this. And this is what this talk was about. It wasn't about date rape. It wasn't about his other books. It was all about male suicide. And this is what we got. This is what we ended up getting. These huge amount of protests. And I'm going to play the whole video for us. And there's some quotes by Warren Ferrell that I want you guys to make sure you read. And it really shows why feminists don't want men to talk about these issues without feminists. So here we go.
The local has endorsed this rally and has endorsed certainly and will join the U of T Coalition Against Sexism. In terms of the unpaid work, I mean, we're not even talking about the unpaid work that women, primarily women do in society, health care, family care.
Women hold up half the sky. 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 Warren Ferrell! Fuck 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 Warren Ferrell!
And like these so-called men's rights groups are actually hate groups.
No hate speech on campus! No hate speech on campus! No hate speech on campus! No. Yes, it would be rape. Sorry. That would be rape. That would be rape. No, no violence.
You see what they're doing right now? They're actually blocking the doors, so men or anybody who wanted to hear about this talk about male suicide can't go in. So all these feminists and feminist organizers try to block anybody from going in to hearing this talk. So it's very concerning that this is how they reacted to a talk about male suicide. But let us continue.
Sir, stand at the back. Oh, we registered. That's fine. But right now, there's a temporary delay. Okay? Trying to get sorted out.
He also, one of his famous quotes, he called date rape exciting, which is just horrible and misogynistic. There's nothing exciting or fun about rape. Rape is horrible, and we don't tolerate that sort of thought at U of T.
Well, what are the chances she actually read that whole quote in context? Well, I wonder what she would have to say about the two studies that he cited right after saying that 40% of women said would say no when they really meant yes. Did she look at those studies? Did she read about that? Highly doubt it. She was probably told by her feminist professor that this guy called rape exciting, and just all rape is exciting, and you know she got triggered. And so here we are. She's blocking other men from hearing about male suicide. So let's continue.
I came as part of my
Let's
women's
go and
studies.
talk to him.
We're not super interested in talking to you, first of all, but basically we're here to shut down an event that is promoting the patriarchy.
So now he's standing in front of someone, again, trying to block someone from going in, into this thing, and he's like, we don't want to have a conversation with you guys. We're just here to make sure you can't go in and talk. We're here to make sure you don't have free speech. This is what they're here for. And luckily the cops are there to get them away from the doors, but you'll see how bad it ends up getting.
You're doing it really well. Good job.
Very frustrated. I was studying all today, and I took time out of my studies to come here. Would you like to ask him why he's here?
I'm not sufficiently convinced that I'll receive an answer that isn't what I presented.
2 of my friends committed suicide, and I want the peace of understanding why that happened. Wow.
This dude's on the brink of tears. He said he just had 2 friends commit suicide. And so there was a talk about why men commit suicide and trying to understand that Warren Ferrell was doing. And these feminist garbage, these women power people, wanted to make sure he couldn't hear about it. And then this other girl, this girl that was just on here, said that she doesn't care why he wanted to answer. She already had her preconceived notions of why he wanted to listen to this talk. Disgusting people. This is absolutely disgusting behavior that this behavior from feminists cannot be tolerated. It can't be. This is intolerable. And yet, we eat shit and take it. We should be done doing that. Let's continue.
When did this happen? It happened about 2 years ago. It was one after the other like that. Did you expect to get some addressing of suicide issue at the talk here? Yes, I did.
What I had to ask on that, and I'll ask you, is why this space to talk about that? Feminism, for example, offers lots of spaces to talk about mental health issues, talk about depression, both in men, women, and people who don't identify within the binary.
I think everybody's voice should be...
Did you hear that? You don't need your own space. You can talk under the guise of feminism. So to them, the only way we can talk about these things is under the guise of feminism. And the reason being, just like in those quotes before, like Warren Ferrell said, it's to say that we're going to prevent your speech because all male speech is hate speech toward women, and so all the reasons why men kill themselves is completely because of men. Victim blaming. They hate to talk about victim blaming. They say victim blaming is like one of the worst things you could ever do, but here they are. Any problems that men have, to them, it's the patriarchy's fault. It's men's fault. And they're not allowed to talk about it within their own spaces. They have to talk about it under the guise of feminism. What does that sound like to you? That's tyrannical speak. This is communism, straight up communism. That communist thinking, where the only way to solve your problems is under our guise and our understanding of the world. That's it. And if you try to talk outside of our worldview, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure you don't have that space to talk about it. We'll ostracize you. We'll cancel you. We'll delete your social media. We'll convince banks to stop doing banking with you. This is starting to happen already. This kind of stuff today. And this was happening all the way back in 2012. Like 9 years ago that this is happening. fast forward 9 years after this, and it's 10 times worse because it's social. All of social media is like this now. You don't fall in line with our worldview, you're gone. And banks are starting to start doing stop doing business with people who have conservative opinions, and they want people. They want credit card companies not to allow purchases of guns, purchases of anything that could be labeled conservative. If you're donating to a political candidate, you won't be able to do that if it's a Republican candidate, or any candidate they don't like. And then look what Amazon can do. If a company has a conservative bent to it, or comes out and speaks positively about conservatism, or a certain politician that's not part of the left's worldview, now Amazon can be like, you know what, you're basically crazy, extremely right wing. We're no longer going to be a distributor for your products. When that company is completely 100% dependent on Amazon from distributing the products, what happens to that business? It's gone. It's gone. If Amazon does not allow you to will not allow you to distribute your products with them, it's hard to get a business going. So if you're a conservative business owner, you better shut up and not talk about politics. You better not support anybody publicly. This is a scary world we're going to live in. And it all started with this kind of crap back in the mid 2010s. It got really bad in 2010s. This kind of stuff. Let's continue.
Heard. I wondered why the security was trying to keep me back, and I think it's for my own safety.
You guys see that Nazi salute? You see that Nazi salute? Let's go back. They were already calling people Nazis back then. Look, yeah, there it is. Nazi salute. Calling the cops Nazis because the cops...
How do you sleep at night, man?
Calling them Nazis because these cops were trying to allow free speech to happen. Can you believe that? Calling cops. And these are Canadians. These are Canadians. They're supposed to be like the nicest people ever. These are all Canadians. And they're calling these cops Nazis because these people are physically blocking access to a public speaker. That's what Nazis did. That's what Nazis did. Nazis limited free speech. Nazis did. It's amazing that we've come this far. It's amazing.
So you believe it's hate speech, right?
It is hate speech.
I've never heard of him before. I don't even know what he's talking. I've never heard of them before.
We invite you to educate yourself.
I just wanted to listen to him.
Go on Google.
I just wanted to see what this guy is and what he's talking about. But now I can't get in.
You should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else anyway? Does someone follow me?
Fucking scum. Yeah, just another.
I just want to listen to someone else's opinion. I'm not even on a side here. I just listen to as many people as I can.
You know what though? Why would you pay money to fucking support a fucking rape apologist if you weren't fucking one?
I've never heard him say anything about.
Well, it's fucking scum.
You have a ticket?
Yep, calling a guy who wants to go listen to to talk about suicide is effing scum to her. It's amazing, and these people, these protesters should be embarrassed, but they're not. They're not embarrassed. They actually think they did something good. But it's insanity. It's insanity. What has happened here? Calling a guy scum because he wants to hear about male suicide and why it's so prevalent. The suicide rate for men versus women is 4-1. 75% to 80% of suicide are all men. And there's a talk about it, and feminists wouldn't allow, didn't want men to go there. And in fact, the men who did want to hear about male suicide, they were calling scum and rape apologists. Can you believe that? I mean, I can, because I know the history of feminism. I've done tremendous amount of study about it, and how even the earliest feminists, the suffragettes, how man-hating they were. So you have 150 years now, 150 years of this stuff being peddled on women, of this man-hating, and here we are. That men can't even talk about suicide and without feminists getting upset about it. Because they know that Warren Ferrell isn't going to just blame men for these things, or the patriarchy, which doesn't exist. Women need patriarchy to exist to make sure that they can say that they're victims of everything. They need patriarchy to exist to continue to be victims. And I guarantee you, even if tomorrow all the politicians all became women, they'd still say we live under a patriarchy for some reason. And we're, in this society now that we definitely, as men, I'm on my 3rd TikTok account as of today, because I mainly talk about divorce and child support and child custody stuff. All because, Gen Zers who were 16, 17 years old mass report my page because they didn't like what I had to say. That sometimes dads are poor because of they're paying so much child support and things. And then trying to teach them the history of child custody, that it was all started off by women, by a feminist. But when you start saying that a feminist started these problems, child custody issues, well, you're a misogynist, you're an anti-man. A woman, especially a feminist, couldn't be responsible for the reason why men get screwed over for anything. It's all men's fault. So as soon as you start blaming and putting the blame, even though there's historical record and legal record of this is where it all came from, from her. Everyone knows, everyone in law who studies law and family law knows the name Carolyn Norton. And I'll pin my other video about Carolyn Norton. I just posted it a couple days ago, where the idea of the tender years doctrine came from, which America was under until 1981. Ohio was the first state to ever get rid of that statute, the tender years doctrine, and replace it with the quote-unquote best interest of the child. And that's still a problem, because judges still believe that mothers might be still the best interest of the child being under their care, no matter if they're abusers or not. But again, men are not afforded these spaces unless it's under the guise of feminism, so they can direct the narrative, so they can direct the conversation. Because this is complete whitewashing, completely historical rewriting. They blame the patriarchy because they think and that's what they do. They try to blame patriarchy for everything. And when it comes to the child custody issues, they say it's patriarchy. It's men who made the decision that women were better child caregivers. And then when you go through that history and you find out men never made that argument. It was Carolyn Norton who changed the law in the United Kingdom. That statute, got even worse in the 1870s over in England, and that statute came over here. That for anybody under the age of 13 needed to be directly with the mom because they were better caregivers in those tender years. Read up on Carolyn Norton about the tender years doctrine. And her writings, she had extensive writings, and all you hear about is the tender years of children, that fathers are not capable of taking care of children for that young. And now we have thousands of psychological studies that show that men are actually pretty essential even at those young ages. And that even at those young ages, that children do best under 50-50 custody. But you bring out but if we have that conversation, that doesn't help feminism. It hurts feminism. It hurts feminism. So we're not allowed to have that conversation because feminists will just blame patriarchy. I'll link the whole video so you guys can just watch it without me talking about it if you want. But it's a pretty upsetting video. It really is, especially when you know that the talk is about male suicide, and that these men were denied it. Not only denied going in, but were called scum and rape apologists. Who knows how many men were trying to go in there because they felt like society hated them for whatever reason, because they were a man, or because they weren't providing enough for people, or whatnot, or a whole bunch of thought that they were useless, and this man might be thinking about committing suicide on himself. And then what would happen? He would go there and be called scum and a rape apologist by feminists. And these women are the people that were there, I'm sure, are very, very, very proud of themselves. It makes you mad and sad. It's just unreal. It's unreal that this happens in Western society. We're not a free country. We're not a free country anymore. Canada's not. America's not, because of all the censorship that's been going on. So, kind of a glim topic today, like most of my topics, but this one really was bad. I've always been wanting to do a YouTube video about this specific incident, but I have another video that talked about why, went through a news story about why women and feminists don't want men's rights groups on campus, and I'll post that at the end of this TikTok. But if you enjoyed this TikTok, you learned anything, please like and subscribe, and comment. If you comment, it'll also help try to get people outside of TikTok, outside of the people that know me, and help this channel grow. So please like, and if you like, just comment something like thanks or I can't believe this. Anything like that. That would be great. That would help me out a lot. So thanks. We'll talk to you guys later, and hopefully I'll be posting a lot more for you guys. Talk to you later.